Conversations episode. Oh, shoot. I definitely don't know.
13, 14, somewhere around there.
I think 13 sounds right. We've had we've taken a week off, one for the holidays for Thanksgiving, and then we missed a week after the election, I think. So, but it's good to be back. We're going to try to put the election mostly behind us. It was a lot of build up for that, but now we can just enjoy talking about some regular topics.
Some other topics, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're new to the show, this is Critical Conversations. My name is Sam Castles, and my co-host Jared Bessie here.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Our basic structure of the show is to take some good conversations about tough issues that are a little bit harder to talk about, a lot of noise surrounding them, and just break them down and find a way to have healthy, constructive conversations about them. So today we're talking about some conspiracy theories. Very exciting. What they are.
I think this is a relevant topic right now, and I think it's just going to be fun to just chat about some crazy conspiracies, but also talk about what we can do about them and how to navigate those waters.
Right, so. Absolutely. But before we jump into that, we're going to break down a few news events from the past week or so. And you want to start us out, Jared?
Yeah, I just have a couple lingering election thoughts and things to just mention. First, Trump is still not saying much, but saying a lot of things that are still crazy. So that's always exciting. But it looks like it's been pretty finalized for a while now. But one of the most interesting things that I found this week was this is from the Wall Street Journal. They basically looked at landslide counties. So this is kind of looking at polarization and kind of how places have been polarized and how we've started segregating by people naturally over the last couple of decades. So for example, in 1980, the presidential candidate, where the places where the presidential candidate won by at least 20 points. Okay, so there were about 4% of all counties in America were that way.
Oh, wow.
So
wow.
About 391 counties. So that's places that are crazy for one party or the other, right?
Right. And even 20% is not that high, honestly.
No, it's not that high. But only 4% of counties nationwide were like that. By 2016, that number had risen to 30%. Okay.
Wow.
And then this November is 35%. So just one election cycle has changed 5 full percent. That means 1,726 counties were considered landslide counties where the president was elected by more than 20% of the population.
Wow.
A bigger 20% differential, which is crazy. So people are slowly moving to places that they feel like they fit better.
Is that really it? Do you think it's because people are moving?
I think that's a lot. That is part of it. I think there's also, I read a whole book on this in school, an urban rural divide.
Yeah, see, I think that's what's changing.
Yeah. So that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, it's because people are moving to the city. So there's right, those people that are more likely to have that kind of thought are going to be moving into cities. Anyway, so it's just really interesting that's
okay. I think I see.
Right.
At first when you said that, I was thinking people are picking where to move based on their political ideology, which is not really it.
No,
it's
so they're
more
not they're not I'm going to go, I'm super liberal, so I'm going to move to Seattle, which that happens, but it's not that's not, what.
It probably doesn't explain all of it.
Yeah. Right. But it's mostly I don't agree with kind of these values. I'm going to kind of move to the city. And then it ends up that's kind of all the people in the city think the way and all the people in the rural places think that way.
The people who are more likely to move to the city probably have these kind of political ideologies already or are more susceptible to them. Whereas if you're moving out to the country, you probably have different values.
Yep. So anyway, I just thought that was really
super interesting
statistic. There was a whole article from the Dispatch that was 7 different graphs breaking down the election that was worth looking up. So if you go on the Dispatch's site, they have Sarah, their writer, has a really good article about that. But that was just the one I found most fascinating. So
the next news story, if you're done with that one, Jared, is some more coronavirus vaccine news. So this really snuck up on me because in the US, we're kind of like, when's this vaccine going to be? People are tossing around like April, March, crazy soon would be like January, later and realistically for everyone might be like August. But in the UK, they just approved the Pfizer coronavirus vaccine, which is pretty wild. And like, you know, the catch is obviously they're going to just start with giving it to healthcare workers and I think those who are taking care of the elderly and the elderly themselves, like people over the 80 is one number I heard. And so I think it's still going to be a little bit till everyone gets it in the UK, but that's huge. And on top of that, that's starting this week. Like they're starting, by the time this gets published, they might have, be days away or like a day away.
Yeah, which is crazy. That seems really soon. And I knew like we've gotten close to the US to approving some of these, and some have been approved for like final approval.
Right.
But
last
to think that they're actually like rolling it out in the next couple of days is pretty crazy.
Yeah, a lot of articles I'm reading are saying shots given in the next couple of days. So, so that's big news. Really, I mean, I think a lot of other governments or regulatory agencies or whatever are a lot more cautious than I guess the UK government is, but sort of like cynically or whatever, it's good for the outside populations of the world to look at, see what happens in the UK. Does it seem to be effective? Okay, maybe we can speed up. Or if it's, not so effective, then you kind of get that benefit. So UK can be a bit of a canary in the cave or whatever.
Yeah, it's a little trial period, a little guinea pig.
Yeah, well, exactly. Interesting news.
For sure.
We got one more story.
Yeah, so this is just broke today, which is, for me as a movie fan, this is big news. So Warner Brothers, Warner Media announced today that all theatrical movies for their 2021 slate, so that includes The Suicide Squad, Dune, In the Heights, which is Lin-Manuel Miranda's musical, bunch of other movies, so it's like 17 or 20 or so big theatrical releases are all releasing both in theaters and straight on HBO Max, their streaming service.
Same
day, free of charge on the streaming service. So as long as you're a subscriber, there's no like added bonus like the whole Disney thing with Mulan, which is really crazy. And I think it's we've had kind of like some movies have just kind of released on iTunes for $30 right at the beginning of the pandemic. That was kind of the trend. While most big movies kind of like waited to be released next year. Tenet came out, didn't really do very well in theaters. It's just now hitting streaming this week. But still as like a purchase, like you'd buy it on Blu-ray and digital. So this is really big news. It's the first kind of streaming platform to actually do this kind of thing. And if you want to like a good breakdown, Dan Murrell formerly of Screen Junkies on YouTube does like a really good breakdown of what this could mean for the movie industry. And if other streaming services do this, and if it works well, because this way the studio is taking home 100% of the profits instead of like 40 or 50%, depending on what the theater takes. It could be really lucrative for them, and this could be the end of the theatrical experience as we know it. Which is wild. And as someone who loves the theater, it's like crazy. But also, I'm probably going to watch a couple of these on HBO Max because I have HBO Max. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think, to see how it all works. Theaters might be one of those industries that was kind of dying anyway, and then COVID comes along and just pushes it over the edge.
Yep.
But I mentioned when you told me this, pirating could be a huge issue. Like maybe they release these movies and they realize, 70% of people just pirate this. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I feel like theaters would never truly go away. Like they might just lessen drastically.
Right. And also it's interesting to note that Congress didn't renew the monopoly license on theaters. So studios are now legally allowed to purchase theater chains. So they weren't before, basically so that, Disney couldn't buy AMC and then only show Disney movies. But that's gone now. So there's also a chance that with this kind of streaming thing, like Warner's making lots of money, and they're like, well, we can just buy the whole studio and then show our movies there. So there could be some of that going on. It'll be interesting to see in the next week what studio chains or movie theater chains do in backlash to this announcement. I don't know.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Very interesting.
So if you have HBO Max, it's good news for you. Get a lot of free movies.
Yeah, seriously. How much is HBO Max a month?
$15. So
that's not bad at all.
Much more than Netflix, and to get like 20 of the top movies that you normally pay, $15 each to see.
Yes, seriously.
It's not that bad. Yeah. Plus you're getting everything on HBO. So
yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, it'll be a fun trial year.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Should we jump into the topic?
Let's jump into it.
Cool. So I kind of wanted to talk about this, I think, mostly because I feel like right now we hear a lot more conspiracies, or at least I'm around a lot more conspiracies. With COVID, with the election, I feel like, there's obviously a lot of people on the right talking about the election was all, fake and a fraud. And like, I think you could call these conspiracies. I think, there's, what was the documentary that went around when COVID first came out? I forget the name of it now. That was all like debunked. Anyway, so
the pandemic.
Yeah. So I think there are, it's kind of come to the forefront in a lot of Americans' minds this year. But I also think conspiracies have been around for forever, and we're always talking about different kinds of conspiracies. And so just in the theme of this show, I thought it would be fun to talk about conspiracies and talk about what we can do about it. So what do you think? What do you think defines a conspiracy? What is a conspiracy?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it is such a loaded term, and it's something that it's really easy to just brand your enemy. Like, that's a conspiracy theory. It's like, how do you fight that? Like,
anything they believe is a conspiracy.
Yeah, if you get enough people calling your theory a conspiracy theory, it's like, okay. I looked up this little clip because I was trying to figure out, like, what do people think about conspiracy theories? And there's, do you know who Murray Rothbard is?
I don't think so.
He's like a libertarian academic. He's like very famous in libertarian tradition. And I don't know a ton about him and his writings. I just know that he's well respected. And there was this 2-minute clip of him. It was an old clip. It must have been like the 80s. And they're like, what do you think about conspiracy theories and all of that? And he was like, well, frankly, I don't think it's a good term to use because, if it's just four groups around a table, 4 guys around a table talking, and I don't like the guys, then of course they're conspiracy theorists. But if they're doing something I do like, then they're guys working together for a great effort. So, and I kind of agree with that. Like, you have to be really careful. But I do think the general, probably correct definition is just anything that, to me, it's this element of conspiracy, meaning that a lot of factors are working together to hide the truth, and I have to believe in a lot of different linked things to get around to what the truth really is. Like, it's like this hidden truth, and I think and we'll get into this, what makes it so dangerous is it's really hard to disprove because that's kind of the point. Like, well, of course your studies and your news and your politicians are going to say this. They're part of the problem. They're part of the conspiracy.
Oh yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I definitely think that's true. Like, it's basically a theory to something that is widely held as true or believed, an alternate version to explain that event. So a lot of times it's about an event, event or a specific point in time or a specific thing that happens. But it can be broader than that too. But yeah, it's against the popular grain, and has to have a lot of different threads connect to make it work.
I think, like I said, it gets thrown around a lot, but there are definitely some cut and dry, like, that's a conspiracy theory. Like,
right.
It's really wild. I feel like in the age of the internet, we would have hoped oh, all conspiracy theories will be a thing of the past because now we have this freedom of information. Everyone has all of the facts at their fingertips, but we probably have seen an opposite trend. I mean, obviously,
Yeah, I think
my life experience before the internet is non-existent, but
right.
still, like, you would expect, I feel, people to be less gullible.
Well, I watched a little mini documentary on some different conspiracy theories. But I think it's super interesting. So like taking a conspiracy like JFK assassination, right? So we may talk about this a little bit later. But the idea is that, it was an inside job where there was more than one man. It's not Harvey Lee Oswald because he was murdered. Like there's a bunch of different theories to explain the assassination. And basically like at the time when that happened, it was just people talking like on the street corners, like, oh, kind of talking about it. Like, oh, maybe this is what's happened, which I think is why there are so many alternate versions, right? Because just people chatting.
Rumors and stories.
Yeah, it's kind of in papers, but it's also like, it's more in tabloids and kind of these kind of things that get people talking. But whereas on the internet, so let's take something like the flat earth movement, right? That's not really a conspiracy, but like something that, people get together and believe.
Yeah, I would call it a conspiracy.
Because it's people, they're trying to hide what it
exactly.
And with the advent of the internet, these people can come together and discuss in so much easier fashion, right? So instead of it just being kind of something you read, you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It's like, oh, I kind of believe this. It's so easy to find other people that also kind of believe that.
Right.
You start reinforcing those opinions with each other, and then you created your own echo chamber of that idea.
That's a great point.
On the internet. And I think
yeah.
places like Reddit and places like, anywhere like Facebook is all curated to your own people you choose to follow. So like,
oh yeah, Facebook groups are, I'm sure there's some wacko Facebook groups for sure.
Yeah.
And like YouTube channels and YouTube videos. There's
right.
Just
you subscribe to those 10 YouTube channels and you're like, I'm on the internet, I'm sending you my news all the time, but you're getting it from those 10 sources or, whatever.
Yeah, I think that's just a huge danger of the internet in general, like the misuse of it, or like the temptation to just, I'm just going to keep finding people that believe what I believe. And then we're just, okay, I know this. I know, there's people that believe this like me. And all of a sudden you're so much more confident.
Right. Which I think it can be a really good thing for other things, like finding people that are similar to you in ways that you couldn't before, a couple decades ago. But I think it can easily reinforce these unpopular beliefs, right? And make that a lot easier.
Yeah. There's some classics. Like you said, flat earth is a big one. And
so let's talk, we can talk about a little bit of some of the, so let's back up a little bit. So why do you think people believe conspiracies? Because I think there's all this, there's lots of conspiracies, but often for me, I'm just like, what seems, the rational explanation is the popular explanation, the one that makes sense to me. So I always wonder, like, how do people actually believe this? Why do you think people actually believe this?
I think before I answer that, I will say there are two reasons that I think there are much fewer conspiracy theorists than people think there are. And I think the first reason for that would be conspiracy theorists are a really loud minority. And then because when they say something that seems so ridiculous to the outside, that like the outside just amplifies them. They're like, oh, look, someone believes the flat earth movement, for example. I feel like before people started making fun of the flat earthers and talking about like the group, it was probably small. And then it just gets amplified and all this attention is brought to it, and it seems like this big group. And I bet there are people who found out about it and ended up like buying into it. So the first thing is, I think these crazy minorities get really amplified on the internet, and like all it takes is one crazy flat earther to post something, and then like it's blowing up on this site,
you've got thousands of people responding to that person.
And you start seeing these things in disproportionate numbers, and you're like, okay, I guess there's a lot of these people out there, but I don't actually buy it. I mean, that's just my personal take. I feel like there are less than we think, which is good. And then the second thing is, I think there are a lot of trolls on the internet as well. And I think there are times where people just enjoy misrepresenting or playing devil's advocate, and they might not actually believe all of this or live it, but they like to have fun with it, you know. Not that I'm not denying these people exist or that there is a decent number of them, and I still think conspiracy theories are a huge problem. We can talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, to get back to probably the original intent of your point is, I do think people just like I had read something that said, you know, it's a way to make, I think this is probably the article you shared, but it's just a way for people to make sense of the world, like when it's confusing and maybe they've been burned by the system in other ways, like they've had bad experiences with the government or bad experience with the doctor too, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't like the fact that they're telling me I have to vaccinate my kid, and all of a sudden, yeah, you start doing this research and you find your niche groups, and so I think part of it is the internet, and part of it is just like we as humans love comfortable truths, and we love being able to create a narrative that is comfortable to us, you know?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different things that go into the belief. My kind of initial reaction, which I didn't read a ton about this, but the one that kind of sticks out to me is that you feel like you're part of something and you're part of a group. Because I feel like a lot of these, you feel like you kind of feel special and you're like, I know the real truth. And then these people, we together are the true like believers or the truth, whatever. Right. And you kind of become part of this group identity, which is, you know, it's good. You just when, you know, if you're, you know, I'm sure you feel that way about like whatever you're passionate about when you find your like-minded people. And so I watched this Flat Earth documentary a couple of years ago, and the leader, like you could kind of tell he was pretty bought in, but there was some times where you're like, do you actually believe this? Or are you just doing this because you're now the leader and you're the popular one, and before you were kind of a misfit and outcast, and like, but now people love you and listen to you, and like, you've got all these like cool, you know, you get to tour the world and discuss your beliefs. And I think that's a lot of part of it. That's like this kind of, it's a place to belong. And I think it's also often people that feel burned or feel left out by the system or whatever. And I think, you know, just to look at the election right now, like it's people wanting to believe something different and make sense of something they don't think could have possibly happened, which I think why the JFK was like kind of one of these things that kicked off these conspiracies. Cause it was like, it's such a devastating moment for the country. Everyone loved JFK. Not everyone, but you know, a lot of people loved JFK, and he
was very popular.
Yeah, he was very popular, and it hurt. And so there was like, well, there has to be some, you know, other explanation than someone just, you know. And so I think it kind of is a different way to make sense of
things. I think it's definitely sad. I mean, something that came to mind was you know, even like World War II with Adolf Hitler's rise to power and his anti-Semitism. I mean, if you look into his beliefs and, you know, what he wrote in Mein Kampf and how he spoke, he was so, I think it's 100% a conspiracy theory that, you know, Jews were, in his mind, responsible for so much of his personal failures and the failures of Germany as a whole. And I think, you know, there are scholars who have looked into him and the way he starts to be suspicious at point A, and then he just starts adding more data, and oh wait, actually World War I we lost because the Jews like betrayed us on our front line, and suddenly it's just grown to this huge theory where it's like it's absolutely conspiracy. And then he brings along, he's a popular speaker, and he tells people like, no, this is a comfortable truth. The Jews are the one that's the problem. They're holding us down, and now we're gonna rise to power this way. And now I'm wondering, as I'm saying all these words, if like the YouTube algorithm is gonna like hear what I'm saying and be like, this is a Nazi video. I probably shouldn't even say Nazi.
We're gonna get banned now.
Yeah, we're gonna get banned. Nazis are bad. I'm like triggering all of the So stuff like that. Like that is I 100% believe that's a conspiracy theory that had earth-shattering, terrible, horrendous consequences. And
and people in Germany right, were feeling down. They had just
Exactly.
lost like World War One. They're, in a depression. They want to look to this charismatic leader who's spouting things that make more sense of what the world is than they want to
Yeah.
think. It's this,
Right.
you want to buy into something better and greater. And it's a
Yeah.
slippery slope.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I think it's super easy to fall into this trap of wanting to be better and find something that explains the world in a different way.
Yeah.
I also find it interesting in some of the research I was reading, why people believe, and while so many have to do with government and in the government, since in the last 50 years, trust in government has plummeted. Like it was in the 70%, I don't know, like the 50s or something, and then now it's down at like 20%. It's crazy how much it's fallen. And I think that kind of speaks to, we don't trust this anymore, so there must be other explanations for things that go wrong, right?
Yeah. And I think that it is important to be critical and to question your leadership.
Oh,
and
for sure. Yeah.
like there have been rigged elections in many countries, and there, even in the US, like the CIA or like whatever, there's been some sketchy stuff that you would have thought, oh, there's no way like America might have interfered with this election, there's no way, but like this stuff comes out that it is true. And yeah, so I mean, there's definitely some merit to having these theories and discussing, okay, well, like let's think this through. What if this is a lie and they are covering up this? And
right.
yeah, I mean, the government obviously has some crazy secrets. I mean, that's not an insane
No,
thing
for
to
sure.
say.
Yeah. No, I definitely think like some of the reason like trust in government has fallen isn't a bad thing. Like, we look at things like Watergate, like, and
Yeah.
other examples of government doing really shady things.
Yep.
So I think, it's not completely unwarranted, but I think that that thought process can lead to more conspiracies. Is kind of my
I think it's a big issue is how you handle the theories, and
right.
if you start to stake your life on them, or you become so ingrained with them, I think you can be paranoid. And now, okay, well, if I can't trust this, I can't trust anything. My friends are in on it, like all of this. But yeah, it can be sad. I mean, I feel like a lot of people that are really hardcore in these conspiracy theories live really sad lives.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to talk about some famous conspiracies, or what are you thinking
I'm
next?
trying to think, are there any conspiracy theories that you believe, Jared?
I was thinking this earlier. I don't think so. Like I said,
so either.
I'm fairly rational, and I take things that, I like to just, the most logical answer makes the most sense to me,
Sure.
as opposed to trying to connect all these dots.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think I believe anything too crazy. Probably, I think the government has probably like ridiculous weapons. Like, I think a lot of people are so focused on protecting the Second Amendment and like having the right to have ARs and all of that. I'm like, dude, the government probably has lightsabers by now. Like, I feel like
because we built the nuclear bomb in like secret, like, all of a sudden that was around,
and that was in the 40s. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That was a long time ago.
Yep.
So anyway, this is not super related, but I think originally the Second Amendment was there. So like, if there happened to be an uprising against the government or something happened, like people need the right to defend themselves, and we're still focused on having guns. I'm like, dude, if you go to war with the government, you're losing, AR or not. Like, they can put a drone through your window immediately, or probably like a small, I don't know, just like stuff like that. I could buy most conspiracy theories if you told me like, oh, the government can do this. I'd be like, I believe you. I believe they can do it.
I think one that I can kind of see is not real. I don't actually believe this, but like 9/11 being a way to band the people together. It's probably just because I just watched Watchmen, which is the same idea where, a catastrophe happens to band America together so that we can, whatever, band the world together. So I can kind of see that. I don't, because like I feel like the character of Bush and who he was, like I don't think that actually is the case, but under a different regime or something, I feel like that could be could be somewhat likely. But
I'm trying to think. Oh, have you seen the movie Sicario?
yes, but I couldn't tell you much about it. I watched it on a plane a long time ago. It's the drug cartel one, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to decide if I want to spoil it or not.
I mean, it's like 5 or 6 years old.
I'll just
mute for spoilers.
Yeah, true. All right, spoiler alert. If you're ever planning on watching Sicario, which is a pretty good movie, a little disturbing, but pretty good. Spoiler alert. Mute for the next 20 seconds. Basically, at the end of the movie, this girl is working with ICE agents, and they're trying to, in her mind, they're just trying to get rid of the cartel or whatever. But then at the end, she finds out that the CIA is working with the cartel, and they just want the right cartel in charge. And
yeah, it was like they stopped the cartel, but then they ended up putting a new person in the place or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like this guy she's working with the whole time, she's convinced he's CIA, but he's just part of the like Bolivian cartel. And I think at the end of it, they're like, look, the U.S. knows that there's always going to be a cartel in power, so we just want the one that is most cooperative with us.
Yeah, which I think isn't that far off when you look at, like, what was it, Venezuela we looked at the other day, where we kind of like, here's a dictator, I guess, if you want this one.
Yeah, exactly. So stuff like that, I think people could, if you told them in a vacuum, like, oh, this is what's going on, they'd be like, no, that's not right. Like, our government would never do that.
Right.
But then you start to, you're like, okay, well, if that could have been labeled a conspiracy theory and it was true, so like, well, maybe our government would do this. Like, if they're able to do that, then maybe they could rig our election, So I think at the end of the day, I like want to be really careful about what I call conspiracy theory, and it's better to just be really critical and be like, okay, I mean, this is unlikely, but it's possible. I think the other thing I was going to say is, like, I don't view theories as like conspiracy theory or not conspiracy theory. Like, I view them on a spectrum of like, okay, this is incredibly unlikely. For the Earth to be flat, the amount of like cover up and cognitive dissonance that we have to like come to grips with would be immense. Crazy. But then there's probably theories that are a little bit less crazy. Like, maybe this could be called a conspiracy, maybe not. And then there's ones that are like, okay, that's probably true. Like, the government probably does stuff like helping one cartel over the other.
So was the moon landing fake? Is that all government secrets?
Yeah, see, I would put that as a conspiracy theory, but not that strong of a conspiracy theory. Like, I don't know, Right. I feel like you would only need a limited amount of people, but like the Earth being flat, that would be a huge, like, everyone would need to, you would need a lot of people in on that. And that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Right.
Like, I don't think the moon landing was fake, but it's possible. I would never be so arrogant to be like, it's impossible.
Yeah, I think it's impossible.
You think it's impossible?
No, it's possible. I just find it highly unlikely.
I would agree with you on that.
But is Elvis alive? That's, where's that fall on the scale?
Elvis is alive. Tupac's still alive.
I think like those are just like wishful thinking, It's just like,
right.
It's too sad, so we're going to just... you can prove anything. I remember I watched, like, this was years and years ago. It was like my friends and I were watching his joke at school. It was how Obama is the Antichrist, and it was like a 30-minute long video explaining all of the reasons. And it, it's like you can make anything be true if you connect enough crazy dots.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah. What else are some famous ones? Like you said, 9/11. There's like the whole meme, Bush did 9/11. Right. Jet fuel can't melt steel beams. That was a big meme for a while. Epstein didn't kill himself. Does that count as a conspiracy theory?
Yes, I don't know. I never followed the Epstein thing very much. I never really cared about the Epstein thing very much. And then all of a sudden, every conspiracy ever was tied to Epstein somehow, and I was very lost.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about all the stuff, but that guy absolutely did some shady stuff with rich and famous people, and then he just kills himself in the cell, and the cameras weren't working and all of
Yep.
that. So, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm a conspiracy believer, but that does seem very plausible.
Yes, that's fair. I just think a lot of like other conspiracies somehow spiral out of
That's
right,
less
like
helpful, but yeah, like that's kind of what we're talking about, where you believe one conspiracy theory and then there's stepping stones to others, and it can be a dangerous pattern.
yeah, no, for sure.
There's people like Holocaust deniers. That's a big thing.
That's
I would, yeah,
scary.
scary
Like
stuff. What else? I think those are like the big ones. I'm sure there's other stuff.
Yeah, those are kind of the main ones.
And then there's like the meme ones, like birds aren't real. That's a classic.
Birds aren't real. They're government spies. Don't you know anything? Come on, Sam. Gosh.
Exactly.
That is one of my favorite joke conspiracies.
Yeah, that's a good one. Or just the moon isn't real. I saw some meme at some point that was like, the way to really handle conspiracy theorists is to just outdo them. And so when they're like, the moon landing was fake, and then you just be like, oh, you're one of those people that believes the moon is real. Like, they don't know how to respond to that. You just up the ante.
That's good.
Oh man. Yeah.
So my next kind of question or like thought process is when faced with something that could be a conspiracy theory, or like something you see that's kind of outlandish or kind of interesting and piques your interest, maybe on Facebook or the internet or whatever, how should we best handle those kinds of situations? What do we do? Because I have some thoughts, and I just wonder what you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I feel like if you're not already in that conspiracy theory vein, like it's not too hard because you trust your sources. Like it's kind of your typical research guidelines where you're like, okay, is this a trustworthy source? Is it recent? Is it able to be confirmed in multiple places? Are there contesting reports and all of that? But, you know, if the theory itself is about the corruption of these places, then it's a little more complicated if you already have those beliefs. I feel like a big part of it should just be not limiting yourself to an echo chamber. Like, that sounds cliche, but just having conversations with people and talking through what the other side believes, and just being humble and being open to like, all right, maybe I could be wrong about this. And what were you gonna say?
I think similar things, like a willingness to be wrong is really important with these kinds of things, because I think to truly believe something, you can test it and it will hold water if it's true. I truly believe that. I believe that about a lot of things. I believe that about Christianity. Like I think there's things that that we can test and we can hold up. I also think looking at people, especially for conspiracy theories and like modern ones, like looking at people that are similar to you that believe certain like similar things, and seeing what they also think, like not just finding your echo chamber, but like those people kind of on the edge of your circle that you have more overlap with. Because if you just look at the opposite, you're not going to be convinced by anything, right? Because you're like, well, obviously they're opposite from me, they're not going to agree. But I think kind of those people around you, and not just finding that one person that agrees. I think we see this with Fox News right now, with like everyone being like, well, Fox News is all part of it, and we're going to Newsmax, or whatever. And just immediately sequestering yourself into what your belief is. Just looking at those people, were your allies or are your allies? Okay, why do we disagree about that? Let's talk about it. Maybe you still believe you're right, but like having that conversation and being a willingness to be wrong, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think also, and this is a little bit more directed. Well, if you have your conspiracy theories or you have this theory, it's definitely worth just becoming friends and having conversations with people that you think are part of it. Like, for example, if you don't believe like if you're a flat earther, like having conversations, if you have a friend that's a pilot or like works with NASA,
Right.
just having conversations and you can see, okay, this guy is not out to lie to me. Like, this is a normal guy.
Right. He's not part
he
of
has a
the
family.
whole,
Yeah. Like, he doesn't like the government either, like
right.
he
Exactly.
works at NASA. Like, it's just, but you're not going to believe it until you get to know him as a person.
Yeah.
Or if you are skeptical of vaccines, like having a friend who went to medical school or works on vaccines or is a doctor or something like that. If you don't know any of those people, it might be hard to trust them, but just getting to know them as a person, and
right.
I think will go a long way. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Go ahead.
To be open, have conversations.
Yeah.
Do your research too, and look at all points of view. I think that's, what we kind of, we should do.
Yeah.
So.
And this might be jumping ahead of where you wanted to go, Jared, but also I think when you're talking to someone who might believe in a conspiracy theory or
that's kind of my next. Next stuff. Yeah.
I think a huge important thing is, not. I don't want to steal your thunder because this was your point, but not just trying to show them facts like you said, because like we've talked about, it's going to tie into the whole thing. Like, they're not going to believe the .govs if that's what they're,
right.
protesting against. But I think there might be something to be said for having just a bit of a Socratic dialogue where you ask questions and be like, well, does that mean you're skeptical of this and this? Like, because I think if you have those conversations and really seek to follow the rabbit hole and be like, okay, well, wouldn't that mean if the earth is flat, then, all of these pilots that take shipments back and forth, like, are they all lying? And, I'm sure it's very hard to do, but
right.
just being able to give them the benefit of the doubt and listening, not just calling them dumb immediately or you're insane, get aggressive, get agitated, just Socratic method, just talk to them, ask questions, listen, and let them kind of be like, oh, well, I guess they're also in on it, or
I think facts for conspiracy theorists don't always work, and right, because they're like that it's part of the system, it's part of this whole process. I read some studies earlier in the week that was like, it just saying those things doesn't help. It only, if anything, it actually further entrenches that, like, well, of course that's what they would think, right, or you would think, or whatever. So I think just being there to listen and just to, ask questions, and then hopefully you get to share your side and share your point of view as well. And instead of having it just be like, shut up, here's what's true.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a lot of what's happening right now with this election thing. Like, just, to talk about the other side for a sec, like, when we just say, or if, the left just says, shut up, sit down, you're wrong, that's just going to further entrench instead of saying, oh, wow, there may be actual election issues.
Yeah.
We should look into that. Like, let's talk about this. Let's rationally understand it. Yeah. I think that's what should be done, as opposed to just
shutting down, censoring, banning, stuff like
right,
that.
Exactly. That doesn't help anything, and it ends up just further entrenching the side you want. Yeah. So
we're gonna see more of the polarization, right?
Yep. No, that's exactly right.
Yeah, really interesting. I definitely have seen. They're funny, but also kind of not funny when you have flat earthers. They're doing an experiment and they've got all their equipment calibrated and they're going to show it, and then the experiment doesn't go the way it should.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, oh, well, we did the experiment wrong, and it must be not we didn't do it correctly because it's not showing us, it's just oh man, come on, guys.
That flat earth documentary I watched, it was pretty measured. You never saw any of the interviewers, never heard any of the interviewers. It's pretty much just following this dude and the experiences. And it's it's pretty measured. And occasionally they'd like, linger on something that didn't make sense. But they were building up this whole big experiment for the whole documentary, and then it like goes completely wrong. They're like, this will 100% prove it, and then it goes wrong, and then the movie just cuts and the credits start rolling, and it's just
Wow.
like,
Yep.
yeah, it's just so funny.
But do you think those people, after the experiment went wrong, do you think they were still flat earthers after that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Because why? Probably because the experiment was not done correctly.
The experiment wasn't right, or we didn't have the level plane. We didn't have like the ground completely right. It was on a hill, or like, there's a million excuses. And I think again, it's part of that like sense of identity. It's the part of trying to make sense of your world, trying to make sense of something that doesn't seem right. There's a lot tied in it.
Yeah, a lot of psychology that neither of us, I'm sure, understand.
Right.
Why? But yeah, it can be really sad. So.
For sure.
Yeah.
But it is fun to theorize about some of these. So.
Yeah. Like I said, I think they're good conversation to have. I think we should be really careful before we brand something conspiracy theory, but because it has such a negative connotation. But you got to be careful.
For sure. Okay. Any other thoughts? I think that's all I got.
I think that's it. One day I'll find the right conspiracy theory that I totally sign on into. I think for right now, I'm one of the basic mainstream people.
Yeah, wow, so basic. Yeah,
that's
so am I. Except for birds. Birds aren't real. Okay, so I have a recommendation this week to kind of go along with our theme of conspiracy theories. I want to recommend an episode of the TV show Community, which is one of my favorite shows and one of my favorite episodes of the show, called Conspiracy Theories and Interior Design. If you don't know the premise of Community, it's basically a bunch of random community college students that form a study group, and they're all from different walks of life, and it's just hilarity ensues. But one of the guys who's like a 30-year-old slacker who faked his bachelor's degree is there, and he fakes a class, the conspiracy theories class, that is taught by Professorson, and then he finds out this person actually exists, and there's a whole conspiracy on at the school, but is there really? And it's very hilarious.
Great episode. Anyway. I've also seen it, and it is one of my favorites for sure.
Yes, the whole show is fantastic. So if you haven't seen Community, it's on Netflix. Check it out.
Yeah, is it on Hulu also, or is it just Netflix now?
I think it left Hulu. I think it's just on Netflix now. It could also be on Hulu though. So.
Yeah, I know it was on Hulu and then jumped over, I think.
Yeah, I watched it back when it was on Yahoo Screen. So, shout out to Yahoo.
That's crazy. Yeah, that whole show is great.
Yes, very much so.
All right.
Cool. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, give us the outro.
All right. So we are Critical Conversations. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed. We are on Facebook, Critical Conversations. You can follow us on there and like our page to get news and updates on the new episodes. We are on YouTube and Spotify and Pocket Casts and many other places, Google Podcasts, many other places where podcasts can be found. So check us out for sure. So thanks for joining us. Again,
thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a great week.
See you next week.